This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so welcome everybody to week 4, Marie Kondo, your document management and workflow. And today we are going to be talking about workflow. I can get a feel forward. So in week 1, we covered document management. It's not Google Docs or Dropbox or anything else. It's much more. Week 2 is choosing your scanner, simplified. Week 3 last week was designing the solution, and today week 4 is the process of your business workflow. So get right into that. Just a quick history for those that weren't on the original meetings or other meetings. We were founded in 1996, so we're actually in January, so we're 25 and a half years old now. We are focused on document imaging, document management solutions to provide our customers improved effectiveness and compliance in their business processes and provide a significant ROI to their bottom line. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but this kind of software is, to me, one of the most effective investments a company can make to improve their business and the efficiency of the business. As you can see, we have a lot of certifications in different areas. As I said, we're focused on document management, but around document management, you have to have several different types of applications. And one up here in the top left corner is called advanced data capture. And that is having the scanning technology on board to allow you to both capture data off of the paper documents or PDFs or other documents as they come in, store that information in your line of business systems, and then store the image or that file in the document management system at the same time with just one process. This is especially effective on some of the not ad hoc, but the non-standard forms that your documents you may receive, such as an AP, accounts payable invoice. You have no idea what that form of that invoice is going to look like coming into you. And our advanced data capture products allow us to capture all the data on invoices and other types of documents, and then, as I said, send that to your systems. Advanced enterprise search, the ability to search across your enterprise from the desktops to your servers and other places to find the information you're looking for. Automated workflow processes that we're talking about today. Backfile scanning is a lot of customers, as they adopt this technology, you don't have the extra staff to go back and scan all your historical information. So we offer the services to come in and scan that information and put it in your system for you as required. Electronic forms, to me, one of the most critical areas you can automate, again, is part of document management, but it's actually taking your paper forms or other forms that may be PDFs. But if a form is not fillable online, it still is going to require 2 points of data entry, minimum. So the person has to write it out, and then somebody on the other side has to read that data and type it into your system if most forms are for collecting data. So electronic forms allows us to truly collect data one time, process that, send that data to your database systems, and then again, store the image of that form as it was filled out in your document management system for historical purposes. We offer programming and developing services because a lot of times we need to integrate with your line of business systems for maximum effectiveness. And those programming services allow us to do that through the APIs of the different products, SharePoint services, and print management. Thank you. Sorry. So the summary from the first couple of webinars we talked about was Google Docs is not EDM on the first week. Talked about the problems with file cabinets taking up space. What is electronic document management? Describes the process of capturing, storing, or retrieving electronic versions of previously paper-based documents or other media through PDFs, word processing files, digital images, everything. If you think about it, What we're doing is making a Spotify system for your documents and your files. You don't care where your songs are stored. All you want to do is be able to play the song and not have to go looking for it. And we do the same thing for all of your documents, images, and videos. This is one of my customers. They had 55 file cabinets in this one area and needed to get better access to them. Customer service people were having to get up, of course, every time a new person came in, go to the file cabinet, get the file for that location, create new information, put it in the file, and then go file it back. Very inefficient process. I talked about Spotify, easy to use. Metadata is what drives this. The name of the artist, the genre, the albums, just like we do about your documents, the document type, the vendor name, the PO number, the invoice number, all of that's metadata that lets you categorize your documents and your files. So again, finding everything based on metadata, find information based on what it is, not where it is. Information, filing things in a drive, whether it's a Google Drive or just a file share, you're having to remember how that information was filed, which as a new person, you may not know. But a new person can say, yes, I've got a call from vendor XYZ, look up XYZ, and I can find every piece of information for them. What we're not going to do is try to replace your line of business systems. We're not replacing your accounting system, your HR, or your database systems in general. We do allow to collect a lot of data and point that to the different documents and files, but we're not out to replace your accounting system. This is a system to make everything, all those systems, and your employees more efficient. So this is a picture of what that same area for that same customer looks like today. They've got 3 cubicles in that area, plus some workspace at the end. And on the other side, it's other filing area. So it just makes that workspace or that space valuable space again. If you're paying $30, $50 a square foot and the file cabinet's taking up at least 9 square foot per cabinet, you're paying a lot of dollars for storage space. The second week, we talked about how to choose your scanner, from the very expensive scanners like this $90,000 Kodak down to the $280 little desktop scanner that does 25 pages per minute and a mid-range at 50 pages per minute. What is the difference, and how do you go about choosing the difference between those scanners? So we covered a lot of variables, from the speed, the feeder capacity, the paper sizes handled, duty cycle, which a lot of people do not consider, but scanners, like every other piece of mechanical equipment, is designed to handle a certain amount of paper per day. If you exceed that, you're going to probably wear your scanner out. Output formats, the volume of paper to be scanned plays a big part in choosing your scanner. If you're only scanning 100 pages per day, that little 25 page per minute scanner can do a fine job on that, and it costs very little money. But then the time frame, if you're trying to do a back file conversion, or let's say you've got 1,000 pieces of paper coming in per day, and you've got to get all that paper in the system every day, then you got to have a process on a scanner that will handle that and keep up with it. And the software. The scanning software plays an important part of that. And what most people don't do, they may buy a 60 page per minute scanner, but what does it take? Why buy a 60 page per minute scanner to scan for 10 minutes a day? It's just not an effective use of your money or the process. And it takes a number of people, one person can prep and prepare about 2 boxes of paper per day. So if you've got 100 boxes or 1,000 boxes to prep and scan, and you want it done in 3 months, you got to work out that math of how many people do I need to prep that information to keep that scanner running, and what speed scanner do I need to process it. And we talked about our automation process in the third week, the process of actually designing your solution. And the most important part was, I'm sorry, somehow it went backwards, is the 5 Qs. Who, what, when, where, how, and why does this piece of paper belong in your system? What is it going to do when it gets, what has to happen to it? When does it come in? Where and why does it go to a different people? And why does that document exist in the first place? I've worked with so many customers and asking, especially that last question, why does this piece of paper or this document exist? And been told, we really don't know. It's just been done that way forever. And when we investigate, a lot of times it's not needed and they can save time and money. One customer I had, the Department of Industrial Relations, they saved $100,000 a year by just not processing one document through the system every year, every time it came in. So very important. We talked about that through your process. So how do you start? What documents are to be controlled and stored? Where is the information going to be located? When and how often does the staff need the information? Why do they need the information? And then who's going to use it? That's the other part of the question is who. A lot of people, especially in reports, are printing reports out and storing them or sending them out. And the only thing that happens to them is they get tossed in the trash can. So, make sure that your documents are going to the right people and that they're actually going to use the information you send them. So let's talk about workflow. That's the point of today. The workflow automation is defined as the design, creation, deployment, and automation of business processes based upon preset rules where work tasks are automatically triggered and routed between people, technology, and data. So the important part of that is upon doing those preset rules and the automatic triggering and routing between people. This is not depending on your people, your staff passing paperwork through or sending emails by themselves or anything else. It's based on the system tracking your processes and making sure your rules are being followed and sending the information to the people that need it so they can make the choice and make the decision about that task at that point in time. So it enables the replacement of paper-based and manual processes using digital tools, typically, hopefully a single platform. That's one of the things I talk about a lot is, today a lot of different systems are saying they collect and manage your documents. Your HR systems manage your HR documents. Your accounting system is managing your accounting documents. Your project management system is managing project documents. And numbers of your staff, especially in management, are having to log in to 3 and 4 different systems to do their work, to find information or to take part in a particular workflow. And what a centralized work document management and workflow system offers is one place to go and find this information, to have the workflows tracking all the processes and taking part in that process. And if we're integrated with those line of business systems, we can present, or those systems can present all that data from those systems that's necessary to make the decision that they're trying to make at that point in time. So the automation process depends on a lot of things, or provides a lot of benefits. It's improved efficiency. It is, sometimes unreal the amount of efficiency we achieve for our different customers. At some places, especially at Shelby County, Tennessee, and the juvenile courts, we eliminated entire processes or automated entire processes. There's one in particular. They had a staff of 8 people that were scheduling new court hearings for the cases as they came in. And they were always running behind, excuse me, and taking quite a bit of time to work through the system to get those new hearing requests coming in and processing. Today, that work is being done totally automatically for all 8 of those people, and it's being done in about 45 seconds for everything. So tremendous efficiency there. But typically, you'll see somewhere between 30 and 60% productivity increases in your staff and in the work being done. So very, very, very high-end, high ROIs on this process. The other part of that is increased accuracy. Because we're feeding systems, we're retrieving data for lookup values, um, the error rates go down dramatically in the work that's being done. Increased visibility into your work. Managers can look, and we'll show you that here in a minute because it's hard to talk about workflow without actually seeing it. But managers can look at the status of every job that's in process across the enterprise, depending on their security rights, of course. But if you're the CEO or the president of the company, you can look and see everything that's going on within the company and what the status is. So it's very real time. Ground your accountability down to the individual. So as you have your workers, you can see how much work they're doing. It's amazing. So reduction of assumptions, feelings, and increased use of facts in decision making. How much work is being done? How long does it take to get a invoice processed through the system? How long does it take to schedule HR interviews? Because we're putting time frames and we're actually documenting how long it takes to do these things, you have the data to make critical decisions on both hiring or reduction in staff. The ability to use meaningful KPIs and generate real world data for use in the process, and increase data security. Not everybody needs to see everything. This leads to improved customer satisfaction because we're reducing the amount of time it takes to do a job. And this is customer, but also vendors. It reduces your wait times, reduction in the errors that are being processed, and faster job completions across the board. Increased employee satisfaction and morale. You have demonstrable performance records, so employees can really define how much work they've been doing and justify those pay raises maybe. But on the other hand, you have performance records to say, hey, you need to step up the game. And it all leads to increased profitability for the company. If you're not having to hire as many people for doing a particular task, or even relocating or reassigning people because you don't need that many people in AP processing or different areas, then it's all profitability for the company. How many of you, as we talk about some examples here, have a tickler file box? I had one customer, and she was in accounts payable, but I don't know if you can see, but she had a standard file box sitting on her table, and in that she had all the invoices that she was working on to be paid, or invoices, purchase orders that had gone out, waiting on invoices, invoices in process, and where they were being sent to. And the very manual system, and having to track all that through that little tickler file box. And I've seen that in so many places. Maybe a list you keep of emails that you need a response to. You're a manager and you're sending out assignments and trying to figure out when and how those assignments are getting done, and manually trying to track that. Some of you may still have an inbox and outbox on your desk for work coming in and work going out, and trying to manage that process that way. Or you have to assign tasks to people and then keep track of all those responses. It's very common. You have the question, you wonder how fast everything is progressing in your business, or you wonder how much work a particular person is actually getting done. And it's hard without a system, without something actually tracking that, to get those kind of numbers for the work your employees are doing. But it may be just, how long does it actually take us to process an AP invoice through the system? Is it taking us a week or 2 weeks? And why is it taking us that long? Or maybe you have a spreadsheet where you keep track of all your projects and their statuses. Problem with that is if you have multiple people inputting their statuses on that spreadsheet and where they're working, every person that has access to that spreadsheet sees everything on the spreadsheet, and that can be not good sometimes. I'm sure most of you have gone through the process of diagramming your work processes. We just talked about AP invoice processing. What is the process? If it's, does it have to go to the department manager that ordered it to get it approved and approved on? If it's over a certain dollar amount, does it have to go up the chain to get approval? And what are those different dollar amounts? And how do you make sure that's being followed or getting done efficiently? So it's a great drawing, but the question is, how are you enforcing this drawing that you've created? What is the mechanism that says we're actually following our design process? And so how do you know even where each item, each invoice is in its step in this process, and how do you find it? So we try to help you manage that and go through that, and actually what the word is codify this drawing into a system that is actually going to manage that process and track it and make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. This is that spreadsheet. This was for a utility, but they had all these different subdivisions and different processes in place, what type it was, the submittal, where they were on the submittal of the different things that needed to be collected for these processes, what their start date was, and then any kind of status that was waiting for signature, received, all the different things going on in this. But again, everybody sees that process. So any questions at this point? If not, we're going to switch over to show a little demonstration real quick. So this is just one of the current document management and workflow softwares that we use. And it's called M-Files, and pretty simple. Just to go through this a little bit, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see these smaller lines a little bit. But it's broken up into some 4 quadrants, and this is kind of the display page, favorites. This one is what we call common views. So if you think about this and going back to Spotify or iTunes, this is kind of like your genre. We have a genre of accounting, and then a little bit of a breakdown in there for accounts payable, accounts receivable, banks, and so forth. We have a genre of contract line items, customer service, HR, project management. Now, I'm signed in as the administrator, so I'm seeing all of these. But if I was in accounting, I would only see more likely the accounting information and maybe my content or my employees or my information about myself. If I'm in customer service, I would only be seeing the customer service documents, same thing for HR. This quadrant here is information that I've recently accessed. So I'm looking things up, and the reason we do this is, a lot of times you have to go back and look at something you've already looked at that day or a previous day, or you may get a phone call and I've got to look up something for a customer or a manager or somebody. So I go off and look that up, and then I need to come back, and I need to go back to where I was working, so I can simply go back to that document or that process here and start working on it again. This quadrant down here is the one we're really going to be talking about mostly today. It's the assigned to me. This is my work inbox. This is where anything that's been assigned to me shows up and says I have work to be done. As I'm working, especially if I'm working on Word documents, and check that out. These are documents that are checked out to me that I am editing or creating, and then I have to check them back in so other people, if necessary, can make edits to that same document, such as if we're working on a proposal or something. This is the display area, but it's also where I can keep my favorites. So depending on my job, I may keep up some of these spreadsheets for handling customer relationships. Or if I'm in HR, I may have up here the job offer letter that I'm going to be creating and send out offer letters to people. Or in accounting, this is my bank draft authorization letter. So, depending on my job, as I select documents, so if I have a document here or a process, I can click on it and the data comes up, and simply, pinning that to my desktop pins it on that region for me. Or I could just make it a favorite by clicking the little star mechanism. But here I've clicked on this, so now I can see all the data that I've assigned to this document. And if you can see it or not, let me kind of pull this up, but I'm not sure if it's blocking or not, but this document was part of a workflow. It's now in a complete status here. So there's no more transitions because it's already complete. But if I take that, and actually let's look at this one, I can now look at the history of that document. And that history shows me everything that happened to that document in the process. So when it entered the system, it was entered by Tammy Woody, who was the accounting clerk, the AP clerk for this company. It then went to the waiting for department approval. Mark was the department manager, which was automatically assigned. It says he approved that document here, and it also tells us the date and time, which was basically 3 minutes. A minute after it went to his waiting department. So he was sitting there, M-Files was up, he saw it, pulled up the document, said, yeah, this is good, and approved it a minute later. Now that avoided what was happening before, which was the accounting clerk, Tammy, getting up from her desk, walking down the hall, putting this document on Mark's desk and having him sign it or look at it and sign it, or if he's not in, her just setting it on his desk, waiting for him to return. When he returns, he processes it, and then maybe gets it done. It was then passed back to Andrew Green for payment processing, and then Tammy moved it into the complete status. One thing about this approval, M-Files is enabled for your iPhones or your Droid phones, either one, or tablets. And so you can access, if you're assigned this workflow, it'll show up on your phone. You can pull it up and approve it for payment from wherever you are. So Mark's out in the field a lot as a field manager for the department, and he gets these things approved, but he can be anywhere. You can be out, if you're a government contractor and you're out on the arsenal doing something that you have a workflow assigned to you, you can pull it up in your phone and process that right then and there. So that's just part of the history, but I kind of want to, and this is one that's waiting for me. It's in my assigned queue. So I can pull it up when I click on it, and it's waiting for me to payment. So it's in payment processing, and I can invoice that, move that up to that state. So whatever the states are available, so it's in this payment processing state, and depending on the workflow as it's designed, it'll tell me where I can move that to depending on my actions. So I can just say invoice to complete, and it asks me if I want to make any notes about that, and say pay please or something. Say okay, and as I save that, that workflow now disappears from my process. Let's kind of take this from the beginning a little bit, and I'm going to pull this up. And I've just got a pretend document. This is actually one of my documents. It's a quote, but we're going to pretend it's an invoice. So I'm going to pull it over here, and it's copying it. And all of a sudden it opens this up and says, okay, you're dragging and dropping this document into the system here. What kind of document it is? Now, some of this I could pre-do. If I was dropping this into an AP folder, I could do that, but I'm just going to type AP, and it's an AP invoice. And when it recognizes that, it tells me what other data I need to collect. So one of the items is an AP invoice, and I know that this is from Thompson, but this is actually from, say, me. It's an invoice that I sent the customer, and this is a little data set. It's asking me if I want to pre-fill some of the values, and so the vendor name is this, and it says pre-fills that in for me. I could have it go through and pre-fill anything that I've collected on that data set. So the department I want to use is wastewater. So we're going to call it wastewater operations. And and the PO number, we'll give it 456. The invoice number is 12345. The invoice amount is $6,000. The invoice date is today. Date due is say the 24th. The invoice status at this point is just it's a new invoice. Payable terms are net, say net 20. I can assign cost centers. So all this is data sets that you can create in the system to flow through. Let's actually make it wastewater something. And that's all that's really required on this part of the invoice right now. So you'll see here it's entering automatically as I'm creating this document. As this document is inserted into the system, it says any document that I choose that's an accounting AP invoice is going to be assigned to this workflow process. And the first step in that workflow process as I create it is called automatic routing. And what that's going to be doing is looking at the data that I've assigned to the document. And actually, let's take this off for a minute. So, and looking at this data and saying, is it complete? So let's create that document. Well, actually, I forgot one, so we need the account number. And we'll just put that on there. And now create. Okay, so now here's my system, my invoice in the data, and I can preview that. Sorry, something pick up there for a second. So it's just a data set. This is a quote, but it could be an invoice and everything. So, but now I can look at that invoice. I can look at the metadata, and it's said it's back in accounting workup because of some data set. So at this point, it can go back to a routing, or I can send it to the department for approval. But if I did that, the reason it's ended up here is I don't have a department assigned to send it to. So before we send it to the department, we need to assign that department. And we're going to call it wastewater operations. Now, one thing you'll notice here is I don't have the wastewater manager's name on here anywhere. But if I was to look at this data once I assign it, so I'm going to save that. And it's going to go through, and it's now in accounting workup again. Moved it. So it's apparently still waiting for it. But as I talked about, this is a data set. Any of these little things here are data sets about this item. So I can look at this department, wastewater operations, and in wastewater operations, I can see who the manager of that department is, and that manager is Mark Bland. So I don't have to go through and identify. So if the manager changes, my workflow doesn't change because I still will find who the manager of wastewater operations is automatically. So, so this is now moved in. It's an accounting workup, and I can now send it to the department for approval. Go through and say, hey, Mark, because I know who the manager is, please approve this or review this. So I'm going to save that, transition it to the department, and say, okay. Now, again, I'm logged in as the administrator. I've got myself assigned to all the different departments here and the managers. So I can take part in the workflow in every step of the process. It's good for testing. And so now it's back to me and it's waiting for me to approve it. I can now look at that invoice again, go through and make sure I've received everything, or if necessary, I can apply a signature stamp to this document and say, yea, verily, I approve this document or this invoice. And I'm going to route it back to them. I'm going to say approved. I could send it as an exception and put a note down here saying, please review this. We didn't receive, but 8 of the trucks of concrete that we were supposed to receive or something. So approve it. Same thing with the notes. Hit save. And it goes through. And now it's back and it's waiting for the accounting manager approval. And I can either put it on, he can now either put it on accounting hold, it's a reserve PO, which was special to them, or send it on to payment processing. Or I could return it back to the department manager and ask him to look at it again. Put my note in there, hit save, put it on to a payment processing. And now payment processing gets it. They do the same thing, and now they actually pay it, and it's going to the invoice complete state after they pay it. And that one is done, and it's now not in anybody's workflow process because everything's been done and they've paid the invoice. And it can be just that quick. So when I look here, back at that invoice, I see it's now complete. And if I look at the history of that, it's really going to say it's me everywhere. But I've processed it in file servers and went through workup as part of that automatic routing and with the payment processing, and now it's complete. Also, as I change any of that data, it'll mark those changes and everything. So if I had a version, somebody had edited a document and it wasn't really supposed to have been changed, I can actually come back in and change it back to the previous version of that document. So now let's see kind of how much has been done. So if I look at different people, so if I look at my workflows, here's all the workflows I have in the system right now. So I've got invoice processing, petty cash approvals, accounting approvals. So you can look at your accounts payable process. These are all those steps that we may have, all the different steps in the process. Some we went through and some we didn't. And so I don't think there's anything in process or it'd be in my box. But if we try to look at that complete state, here's all the completed invoices that we had in process. If we go back and look at employee public data, this was for employees. As new employees come on board or they work, we can look at the status of waiting for HR approval. There's none in that state. but we've got some information added, and all these people need to go through and add some data to their choice of data. And once they have, so like we could add the office to this particular process, and it's the Madison office. Type in an email address, jhilton at madisonutilities.com. And once we're done with that, we can say we've added our information and send it back to HR for approval, make any notes we want to do, and save it. And now if we go back to those workflows and, public data, waiting for HR approval, now has that work in there for them to go through and approve. So that's, we can actually generate reports on this. So we can generate a report for a particular workflow process and see how many documents were processed, how long it took to go from step to step, all that metric data that you can have on the different data. Some other things you can do is look at just individual items. So if I go down and look at, say, all my employees, here's all my employees for the company, and I can then look at them, look at their data if I have access to do that. But let's look at Mark Bland here for a second. So Mark is the department manager for wastewater. And underneath everything that's Mark's assigned to or touched is underneath his name here now. So any of the assets that are part of him, this Caterpillar truck, the F-150, all that is there, the data, cost centers. But here's all the documents that Mark has been worked with in the process. So we've got CAD drawings, we've got engineering proposals, HR evaluations, project management agreements, all of it. If we want to see everything that Mark's been involved with, is under here. In departments, we can have the different departments here. And I got to it here, but again, any of the documents that have had the wastewater operations department assigned to it are listed here. So there's lots of different ways to find your documents. But maybe the simplest way is, I just want to type Bland. And all of a sudden, everything that's related to Mark Bland, so here's 50 of 802 documents that Mark has been part of down here. But we also have any annotations he's made, which is 15, AP invoices that he's been part of creating, any customers that he's working with are here, cost centers. So if I just type in Bland, I found that data. Maybe I type in easement. Make sure I spell it right. And so now everything that has the word easement is part of the name. And I could, if I wanted to, search the contents of the documents for easement. All of that data shows up, and I can look at it. I can look at the date modified and sort it that way. Actually, there was one I wanted to go back. Let's go back to the data here. So now everything's showing up in my recent access list. But if I go into accounts payable, I'm sorry. Accounting invoices. So if I look at these documents, I have all the metadata that's been assigned to the documents. Click on here, it's going to show up. So any of this data that I want, I can actually put across the top of here. And now, just like in a spreadsheet, I can click in here and I can sort it by the PO number. I can sort it by the invoice amount. Some invoices are very small, some are very large. or I can sort by the invoice date or the different vendors. So very quickly I can categorize and look at reports, and I can also then export this. So I could export this entire data set now out to a CSV file, and I just want the values. I don't want to export the files. I'm not going to get the IDs. So I can just export the visible columns, say yes, it gives me a CSV, and I can actually put this back into a spreadsheet and do whatever I want with it at that point. If it's graph data I need to graph, I can do that. So, the same type of thing. We talked about the HR data can be applied, but maybe it's project management. I want to look at my different projects. Here's projects that were part in the process, and all the documents, data documents. So this one had 1 document on it. This one has 11 documents, but you can see all that information related to the project here. And if it was part of the workflow, that'll show up. And this one is, these are not assigned any workflows at the current time. So let's see, I got a couple of questions here. I'm sorry. Okay. Anything else? I guess that will wrap it up. If anybody else has any questions, we'll stop the recording at this point and